My channel. I have a very monotone voice and I will not be interesting with the speech that I give you or the presentation, but this is a way to build a great system that's going to outperform what you get on your Xbox One consoles and what you get on your PS4. For most gamers, that'll be gaming on a 1080p monitor that's running at 60 megahertz refresh rate. Because whenever we get down into business, your video card shouldn't doesn't matter if it pushes 120 frames per second. If your monitor doesn't can't withstand but 60 megahertz, then it's going to stop at 60 frames per second. So we're trying to do exactly what it'll take to get you gaming without you spending the thousands of dollars that enthusiasts and try to sell you, or you go to a computer store and they're trying to sell you these massive expensive stuff so that you you will believe what they say over your novice opinions, or you're a beginner and you want to become an enthusiast. This is a great place to start without spending a whole bunch of money, so you can get your hands on building a PC for yourself that is perfectly fine with gaming at the rate of what consoles game at, if not better. And this system, even today, is July of 2017, and this system will tie you over for probably about 2 years before you have to do any type of upgrading, unless you want to game at 1440 and you're wanting to run up to 120 megahertz. Right now, the price on graphics cards is skyrocket in your mid to higher range because of what's called cryptocurrency mining. In a few months, we should see the prices of the video cards go down, and the video card that I'm going to present to you today is about $140. But when the market softens back up, AMD's going to release their new Radeon graphics cards for gamers, and that should soften the market up as well. So you should be able to pick up a mid-range graphic card for around the $100 mark um, come August and September. So let's get started. The only used part I have on here is the actual processor. You can't buy these things new, but I've never had a processor that, unless I overclocked it and overvolted it, and this has been a long time ago before there were safety features built into the motherboards to stop this from happening. You actually had to manually set jumpers to change your clock rates. And with one mistake from a jumper being what should be at zero, accidentally putting it at one, or vice versa, you can literally bump the clock up an extra 1,000 megahertz, and it's going to either fry the motherboard or fry the processor. But you're looking at it's been, I think I burnt that processor up in 2001. This processor, it was actually released on the market in 2008, but for gaming purposes, this processor will push up to, uh, I would say, a GTX 1060 before you start seeing, maybe even a GTX 1070 before you actually see some type of bottleneck. So again, this is a great processor, and it's $25. The AMD Phenom II X4. Um, it's a 3 gigahertz quad core processor. Now, with the processor and motherboard, you can choose any mixture of two. Just make sure they're compatible. That's why I like going with PC part pickers to choose my products, especially, or to tell people to choose their products, because it will at the end of it have a compatibility notice. And here, I already know about this, the Asus motherboard that we'll be featuring, and it has USB 3.0 headers, but the case that we're using only has USB 2.0. Uh, we're going to lose some functionality for the sake of being able to make this a budget PC. As far as if you want those 3.0 headers, you can go spend an extra $20 and get a card to go into add-on card to go into the front in your 3.5 inch bay, or I think there's two 5.5 inch bays that you can add those USB headers into. That's an option for you. Um, so moving on from the processor, we need something to cool the processor with. Now I used an easy to install to where you have to do no modifications, you don't have to remove any brackets. So I picked this cooler for that purpose for you beginners. But I do want you to take note that it comes with thermal paste already installed. Now my best advice to you is to go buy your own thermal paste. A Z9 thermal paste is really thick, and I suggest using a thick whenever you're using a aluminum coil. And this will come covered in a piece with a piece of plastic to protect the already applied thermal paste. You'll want to remove this already applied thermal paste before you use your thermal paste, and a pea size amount of your thermal paste right in the as close to the center as you can get it. It will spread out beautifully and not leave any air bubbles, so that the processor will have a hot spot. Now to remove this, you'll use try to get the highest percentage of rubbing alcohol. I think it's called isopropyl alcohol, and just get a towel, remove it, and make sure you leave no lint or dust or anything like that. So try to get a lint-free cloth to wipe that off with. Now you can scrape the first little bit off with a piece of plastic, but to get all of it off, you really need it perfectly clean, and that's where the isopropyl alcohol will come into play. Now the motherboard I chose is nothing fancy. It's it's just a regular AM3 motherboard, and I would suggest AM3 socket motherboard. And it may not be on sale at the time. I did my best to try to find stuff that had mail-in rebates and free shipping. I even changed a few parts around. You can see where that was over the cooler was overwritten. It was cheaper at another facility, but it had the pricing for the shipping wasn't included in it. You had to go into the cart, and for an extra dollar, I just would rather go ahead and order it from Amazon, get it shipped prime, and get it shipped free. Now with memory, now, a lot of people say you want really fast memory, but that's not always necessarily the case. Really fast memory doesn't make a heap of difference whenever it comes to having your own, when you're building a system that's going to have its own dedicated graphics card. It does play a big role whenever you've got integrated graphics, because the speed of that integrated graphics is going to be hindered by the speed of the RAM. Now I settled for just a small build and only used 8 gigs of RAM, which is fine for gaming, and it will be for a while. But you will see a performance difference if you want to spend an extra $10 to $25 to go ahead and get 16 gigs of RAM. Do make sure that you get matching sticks so that you can take advantage of your dual channel. You're not going to see much of a difference, but the dollar or two price between using one stick and using two sticks and getting your dual channel is it's worth the extra dollar or two. Uh, as far as hard drive, I went for a 7200 speed hard drive. These are going to beat any hard drive that's in a console, just for the fact that the consoles use 2.5 inch portable hard drives. They haven't got the wattage. It takes longer for them to seat. So any 3.5 inch hard drive is going to outperform your 2.5 inch hard drives, unless you're talking about solid state. Now, if you're an advanced user and you know how to separate your programs and your data from the places that you want them to go, you're more than welcome to go ahead and spend an extra $50 and get you a solid state drive to load your operating system and some of your basic programs that are always running, that constantly run in the background, like your driver software and stuff like that. You'll let it run on your solid state drive, and then you'll put your games and all your data files, your pictures, your movies, your videos on this hard drive. But for $42, that comes down to 42 cents a gig. You're not going to beat this price, and the only difference you'll find with a hard drive and SSD is the load times of your games will probably be about 20 to 30% longer, and for your boot up in Windows, you're probably going to see the difference between 10-second or less boot up to a 30-second to 45-second boot up, depending on how many applications you've got loading on start. Now, with the video card, again, we're running into problems getting a cheap video card and keeping this system down in price, just for the fact that crypto mining has hit a big turnout. And so what's happened is it takes lots of video cards. Most people are using 6 video cards in just one rig, and some people are using 50, 100, 1,000 rigs to do crypto mining with. But at this price of $140 in July of 2017, you're seeing a big increase in price. This video card should be actually selling for closer to the $100 range than the $150 range. Now, with that being said, you can also shop around on this video card as long as you get from NVIDIA a GTX 970 or above. You'll be happy with your performance at 1080p and 60 frames per second for most of your AAA titles. You'll have no problem hitting those speeds on medium to high settings, and most games that are not AAA titles, you'll be able to set it on ultra set or extreme settings. But I would start my games off on medium setting and bump up what I wanted as I go along. Like I said, my ideal build for this would be a GTX 1060. I wouldn't go over a 1070 if you find it at a deal, because then you're going to see throttling from your processor not being able to handle the physics of the video card that need to be rendered for the video game, for the video card to be able to move forward with the rendering that it's doing. Now, as far as case, we went with what was on sale, what we could easily fit this system into. As far as aesthetics, it has none to offer. It's just your plain, looks like a 1999 case, or a case from 1999, which, by the way, with your rebate, you will be it will actually cost you $19.99 as well. Now, this case I also wanted to pick because it has because you're air cooling your system, and this has 2 fans on the side panel for a 120 millimeter fan, so you can get 2 120 millimeter fans to use with this case. That'll run you probably about an extra $30 to $45, but you will see some thermal improvements when you're gaming if you have these fans on your case, because they'll be blowing fresh air from outside of your case into your case, being cycled out through the rear of your case, through your video card, through the back, the fan that it has in the back, and through your power supply. This fan pulling the air out. It's not a necessity, but it is a suggestion that if you got the extra money, go ahead and throw 2 extra fans in there and call it a day. Now, with power supplies, you can get a more inexpensive power supply, but I would suggest making sure that you get a power supply from a manufacturer that uses quality components. Power supply will determine the life of your computer. If you get a small surge in your house and you have a cheaper power supply, it's either 1, going to burn out your power supply, Two, it may actually let the power go through and you burn up your motherboard, which is a $50 part, or even worse yet, it may hit your video card, which again will cost you $140. So spending an extra $5 or $10 on power supply is well worth the money that it's going to cost, what it would cost you to get something replaced because you had a power surge. Um, Now, for the install of Windows is the only reason why I added the DVD player. Um, Now, there's other ways to go about putting your Windows Media on your computer by creating a flash drive using Windows Media Creation Tool, which you can find on Microsoft's website. If you're not an advanced user, it's because this board doesn't have UEFI, however you say it, BIOS. It's not simple as clicking around on the mouse and selecting to boot from your USB drive. You have to go into the BIOS, set it. A lot of times you have to select it as you're booting up by hitting your F11 or your F10. And so if you're not familiar with that process, go ahead and spend the extra $15 it takes to install this DVD drive. You don't have to leave it in if you don't want to. There's no reason to take it out. But this will be how you install your operating system. Now, a lot of people are paying $100, $130, $150 to get Windows. But what I do is I do a search on eBay, and you'll find, and what I search for is Windows 10 OEM. When I come down to what I get to choose, I usually choose between the $30 and $50 mark. They're selling relatively cheap now, so they've gone down probably about $10 in the past couple of months for your operating system. So I select the buy it now price format. I select $30 to $50 for it, and what I'm looking for is exactly what you see here. I'm not looking for anything that looks like this or this. I want to see the actual copy of Windows OEM for system builders. Now, for them to legally sell you this right here, they must actually offer you, or not legally, but Microsoft's terms and conditions for their licensed software distributors, they must offer you a piece of hardware, and in most of these you'll read a disclaimer of how the piece of hardware is offered to you, but you must pick it up at site. You don't actually have to possess this piece of hardware, but the seller does have to offer it to you. Now, as you see, they've got a hard drive in the photo, so we'll go down and read what they're saying. To comply with eBay selling rule as is, OEM Dell hard drive 200 is bundled. Hard drive is damaged and only available for pickup. Not picked up in 7 days, it will be disposed. Otherwise, you will receive a brand new pack sealed Windows 10 64-bit with free shipping. And most of the other ones are going to say that, so there's your operating system for $40. Now, the total price with operating system after your mail-in rebates is going to be $416. If you don't get one of your mail-in rebates back, then you're still only going to be paying $456, or we'll go ahead and round it up, $457 for a computer that you're going to be happy to game on for the next 2 years before you have to worry about any type of upgrades because of the demands of the new game software that's coming out being too demanding for the hardware that you choose. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, hit like. If you don't like it, then maybe you should actually build this computer and give me a reason you really don't like the video.